Brilliant, thank you very much. Where's it going? Bear with me a second just to find my, presentation. So can you just confirm, Alison, that you can see my presentation now?
Yes.
Ah, brilliant, thank you. Sorry, I thought I'd gone deaf. Brilliant, thank you very much, folks, for inviting me. And thanks also to my colleague John Holland. Many of the pictures you'll see of our farms are good pictures, are his pictures, not my pictures. So I work for Scotland Rural College. I head up a Department of Integrated Land Management. And I also am talking to you tonight about what we do within our Hill and Mountain Research Centre, which is based at a large farm in the Southern Highlands. Just to draw a bit of relationship between Paul's presentation and mine, or my background, I've also worked for 30 years across Europe in what we now call high nature value farming systems where natural areas and some form of farming, mainly livestock farming, work in tandem with each other. And in Paul's presentation, he mentioned the Romanian Carpathians, the Abruzzo National Park, and the Iberian Dehessos and Montados, and wood pasture systems in Spain and Portugal. All of those are excellent examples of high nature value farming, where you still get a range of wildlife occurring in association with the farming practices and not destroyed by the farming practices. But anyway, I'm primarily talking to you about the uplands this evening. And about what we've been doing to potentially rewild parts of our upland research and demonstration farm. And just with regard to that, why are we interested in the uplands of Scotland? Then this is a map on the left-hand side. Hopefully you can see it okay, given the sort of different sort of land capability or land use across Scotland. Actually, in Scotland, only about between 8 and 10% of Scotland is land that is croppable in any sort of a shape or form. And there's about another 20% of land in Scotland that's capable of growing good quality sort of grassland, with the vast majority of that occurring in the sort of the low ground areas of Scotland down the south, the sort of the east, southeast and southwest of the country, over parts of Sutherland with good grassland as well. But the purple blobs on the map there are either areas of Scotland where we actually have upland areas. If you think of uplands as bits with points on them, then there's about 40% of Scotland is upland by that definition. But also the further north and west you go, the sort of soil types, the climatic you get, and the type of vegetation that can subsist there, and generally find that the type of vegetation you get on the top of mountains actually are occurring much closer to sort of sea level in the far north and west. So about 70% of Scotland is upland, or of upland character. And although many people would see the purple areas of the map on the map here as being bare open hillsides, miles and miles of bugger all in this sort of famous phrase, actually within that purple area there are quite a lot of open habitats that we regard as being of high nature conservation value. We value them for their biodiversity sort of perspective. But also the wider context about why I'm interested in the uplands and why my team are interested in the uplands is, and this is a climate action group. You might have seen this before, these stripes going from 1884 on the left to 2018 on the right. These are each year within Scotland, and the red signifies where the average temperature was higher than the long-term average. And you can clearly see that we are in a climate emergency as things have been getting redder and redder over the last sort of 20-25 years in particular in Scotland. And a lot of what we're doing at the research farms, we're looking at how you can actually improve the agricultural productivity, livestock productivity in particular, in upland areas. And certainly doing elements of that will actually help upland livestock farmers go some way to actually helping to address the challenge of climate change. But actually, in reality, if Scotland is going to reach net zero by 2045, the vast majority of that purple area on the map will need to do more than just livestock farming. They will need to actually engage in a wide variety of different additional types of management in order to actually help address the sort of climate challenge that we are currently in and try and prevent it getting worse and worse as the years and decades progress. But we're also in a biodiversity crisis as well in Scotland. And the map here shows three groupings of birds. The green one on the top is woodland birds, and the pink or orangey one, don't know how you'll see it in your screens, are farmland birds. And the blue is groupings of what are regarded as upland bird species. And basically, it's showing how those groupings have changed from 1994, the first year we've got good data within Scotland, to the most recent year was published in 2019, but actually it's 2018. And you can see over the course of that time, woodland birds have generally increased a little. Farmland birds have bobbled along at much the same level, maybe a slight increase, and upland birds have actually been declining over that 25-year period. But actually, these hide a variety of individual species within each of these. Even though farmland birds as a group have been bobbling along relatively fine, when you actually look into the detail of the species within them, you see that there's actually some farmland bird species like the kestrel or the lapwing who have declined markedly over that 25-year period. And when we get to the uplands, then we're particularly concerned with birds like the curlew, the black grouse, where again we've seen huge declines from them. So I'm interested in uplands from a climate change mitigation perspective, but also from a biodiversity perspective. We have a 2,200 hectare research and demonstration farm in the northwest of the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. That's us up here in the top of the diagram here, and we think of ourselves as the chicken within Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park, as you can see from the outline there. We've been in existence for 50 years. We were established 50 years ago to particularly look at the challenges, agricultural challenges facing livestock management in these sort of extreme environments in Scotland, but also for the last 25 years, as I'll highlight in a second, we've been looking and doing a lot of environmental management as well. Many of these slides are quite busy. I'm not planning to go through them during the presentation. The presentation will be made available to attendees to access up from the website afterwards, and you can actually peruse them at your leisure. But we're 2,200 hectares, as I've said, a little bit of low ground in by land, but primarily sort of upland mountainous vegetation going from 170 metres to over 1,000 metres. But just to point out that the sort of the grey areas, the purple areas, the blue areas, and even within some of these light green areas on the map, although those are open moorland, they're actually representative of habitats that, again, as I said earlier on, they're open habitats of high nature conservation and value. Nevertheless, we recognised 25 years ago that we could do more to actually improve the biodiversity value of the farms themselves. And calling it rewilding for the purposes of this talk this evening, but basically we've been just looking to increase the diversity of habitats on the farm. And over much of that 25 years, we've primarily been looking at increasing things on the lower part of the farm, and the part of the farm that's actually to some extent easier to actually manage. So 20 odd years ago, we created, or there was an existing wetland that we've subsequently protected, and is now got quite a lot of tall herb vegetation and wetland vegetation next to our wigwam tourism enterprise on the farms. We fenced off areas of the farm and allowed the sort of scrub to develop, so as we've got good nectar sources for invertebrates and good nesting and feeding habitats for small birds. Why is this not other? We've also fenced off a lot of the water margins on the lower part of the farm, so as we can allow the sort of tall herb vegetation, the natural vegetation, to actually come through, and that's full of insects during the summer, and it's good feeding grounds for swallows and barn owls, etc. Full of field voles, but also full of one of the only populations of black water voles within the national park on the lower part of the farm as well. And rewilding, or you can get improve biodiversity potential on a farm like us by actually actively managing things, but we're also in the headwaters of the Tay, and some parts of our part of the world is rewilding naturally, in that beavers reached us about 2 years ago, we haven't done anything to actually manage specifically for them, but they have actually, as they've been colonising the Tay, found what they see on, or what they find on the farms of interest to themselves. And so, you know, we've managed to do quite a lot on the farm, the lowland part of the farm. 4 years ago, we entered an agri-environment and climate scheme, doing a lot more in terms of wetland management, water margin management, species-rich grassland creation, creating shelter belts on the farm, as well as entering into a woodland management plan. Not going to talk about any of these in great detail. I don't have time to do that tonight. But just to give you some impression, these are the two areas of water, wetland and what's called wader scrapes that we created on the farms. The wader scrapes are intended for weeding birds like curlew and lapwing. We haven't seen them return yet, but we certainly have seen increased usage of both these areas by birds like snipe and oystercatcher. But one benefit of creating these areas, even though on our farms we get between 2.5 and 3.5 meters of rain annually per year, and I'm not as enthusiastic about rain as Paul is. But nevertheless, until we created these wetland areas 4 years ago, we didn't have any standing water on the farm at all. Our main aim was to actually have the rain fall and get into the headwaters of the Tay as quickly as possible. And certainly the type of invertebrates, dragonflies, that have benefited very, very quickly from that standing water that we've created has been great to actually see. And also we've done quite a lot of additional tree planting on the farms, particularly around the margins of the fields. We've created some wood pasture, or trying to create some additional succession into additional wood pasture through small grant funding by the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. We've planted more trees within our riparian zones, or zones next to our burns and small watercourses, and we've established a small number of shelter belts on the farm as well. All with a view to increasing the diversity of habitats on the farm, but also to have actually additional benefit ultimately from a livestock shelter perspective. Not just from the rain, even in somewhere like Craig Larach, we're going to increasingly see drought conditions during the summer as climate change gradually increasingly starts to actually bite. And the key thing about everything that we've done that I've highlighted there is we've achieved that on in and around the lower parts of a farm, which are the real engine block of a farm of our type, but without adversely impacting on the productivity of the actual agricultural fields itself. We've managed to do all of that and improve the biodiversity value of that part of the farm without actually giving up much in the way of productive land at all. So it is feasible to actually do. But nevertheless, you would see from the map at the start, the vast majority of the farms are upland hill country. And so what have we done up there? Well, 21 years ago, again the map here, we had very little woodland on the farm. 21 years ago, we planted over 200 hectares of mountain woodland, montane woodland, up in one of our highland glens. If you think of the farm like a capital Y, with the arms of the Y being these two highland glens, and then the leg of the Y being the stream that actually goes down into the low ground. We chose to plant the bowl of the glen here, and with a range of native woodland species. Initially, we were doing it to actually establish a woodland, let the livestock back in, and allow a benefit to the livestock from the increased shelter at these high altitudes. This goes from about 550 meters and 350 meters to 550 meters. The picture on the right there is the woodland 21 years down the line. It's still not suitable to actually allow livestock back in there without actually damaging the actual trees, but it's the understory vegetation that's really come away. And certainly in that sort of situation, we now have sort of rewilded one part of the farm, and we're comparing and contrasting what's happening in this glen with what's happening in the glen next door, which is still grazed annually by a combination of sheep and for the last 8 years cattle as well. And we also, because there was no woodland at all in the upland area, we also planted a large gorge that was running up towards that area, about 43 hectares of it, again to form some form of connectivity. And certainly in the lower parts of that gorge, the lower altitude parts of that gorge, it looks much more like a woodland now than actually higher up. But we would regard that we've markedly improved the sort of the landscape and biodiversity value of the farm by doing so. Paul mentioned peatlands, and the map here on the left-hand side is areas of peatland across Scotland. Depending how you calculate it, there's something like 2 million hectares of it. Somewhere between 60 and 70% of that 2 million hectares is degraded in some way, so there's a big focus on peatland restoration. And we have done about 100 hectares of peatland restoration 3 and 4 years ago, funded by Scottish Natural Heritage's Peatland Action. It's high altitude peatlands that we actually have. Our deep peats are at high altitude between 500 and 700 metres, and we were doing a combination of what's called HAG reprofiling. Before these areas here on the left were reprofiled, they were bare vertical stands of peat. We've done about 16 kilometres of that. We've done quite a lot of dam installation, both peat dams, then wood dams, gravel dams. I can't remember off the top of my head how many kilometres of those we've done, certainly not as many as Paul was indicating he's been able to do on Allendale. And we've been re-wetting some peat pans, these flat areas of bare peat, to try and get the ecosystem to sort of re-establish. And the peat and the water brings me on to, as I'm coming to a close here, this is a map of Scotland. All the rivers in Scotland are watercourses in Scotland, with the blues indicating sort of good water, blues and greens indicating good water quality, yellows and oranges and reds indicating poor water quality. So you can see, if you remember the map from the beginning, that the low ground areas of Scotland have an issue with water quality. And we don't have an issue with water quality over much of the uplands of Scotland. What we do have an issue over much of the uplands of Scotland is water quantity. And certainly upland land managers now and into the future are going to have quite a big role to play, I believe strongly, in managing their land in a way that reduces and mitigates flood events further downstream in the low grounds. This is part of Dumfries from a few years ago, and this is the A9 from just a couple of years ago. So upland land managers are going to be managing for more than just livestock or game. They're going to be managing for what's a wide range of what we call public goods as well, and water quantity management is going to be a big part of what I would suggest upland land managers will be doing in the future. And then just to come a few minutes just to finish off, I speak to farmers and students a lot, and ecologists and NGOs, etc. And most, when you talk about rewilding in Scotland, most people assume rewilding is this map here, this photograph here on the left, with a picture of a lynx. But in reality, rewilding is just as broad a term as biodiversity. It's a huge term that means many different things to different people. So in any discussion about rewilding, I'm always keen to be clear, what is it we're actually talking about? What is being meant by rewilding in that particular sort of discussion? And just as importantly, what outcomes are expected from that form of rewilding? And another final thing I also highlight is many people assume that rewilding is just leave the Highlands of Scotland alone and things will occur of their own accord. But actually rewilding in a wide variety of forms does need management and needs continuous management. And for that type of management, you'll continue to need land managers now and into the future. So rewilding, in my view, is not actually depopulating the uplands of Scotland. It's just managing the uplands of Scotland in a different way. And when you get the access to the PDFs, you'll be able to link on these to go to various podcasts and short videos about, to get more detail of what we've done on the farms. I've only been able to sort of cover those briefly this evening, but hopefully I've given you an impression that as opposed to the long-standing forests and links, it is possible to actually rewild any upland farm in a way that markedly improves its biodiversity value and its climate change adaptation. I'm beholden to actually highlight who our funders are for the wide variety of research that we actually do, not just Scottish Government, but European Commission, DEFRA in England, etc. And just that's all I wanted to say. We do a lot of innovative work at Kirkton Knockturtyre, but innovation is just doing something differently. It's not all about whistles and bells and new technology. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so very much, Davy. That is just excellent.
Can I? Yeah, I'm just trying to stop sharing. Hopefully, I've stopped.